Hello, and welcome to Inventors Helping Inventors. I'm your host, Alan Beckley, inventor of the Wonder Wallet. If you're an inventor searching for proven ways to make money with your invention, if you dream to see your product selling in stores everywhere, you've come to the right place. There's no better place to get help than from experts, inventors who've already achieved success. Every week, I interview successful inventors, asking them the questions you want to know. Tune in to learn from the experts so you can get your invention out of the tank and into the bank.
Met with a lot of orthopedic surgeons in my day. And so I was going down the medical school track, thinking that I would, be a doctor, but realized that it wasn't being a doctor as much as it was having that independence and being able to be creative. I was really more drawn to that. My first job out of college was in sales for a startup, and I fell in love with just the whole energy that you would get from a startup. And I really wanted to be an entrepreneur right after that.
IHI Nation, don't you absolutely hate to miss out on something good? I want to share with you that my premier training for inventors, the Inventors Bootcamp, registration closed at midnight Sunday, last night, so you just missed out. However, I provide for listeners to my podcast only, if you act quickly and you're listening on Monday, the 12th of August, you'll get an extension. You can still sign up to join the Inventors Bootcamp. So you'll get 5 days of live Zoom meeting training. It's going to teach you how to compare and contrast your invention versus the competition to make it stand out. And then from that, you'll create a clear, concise, and compelling 30-second pitch for your product, the kind that gets attention with marketers. So how do you sign up and still get into the bootcamp? Make sure to register today, Monday, the 12th of August. Just go to alanbeckley.com/bootcamp. And by the way, all this training, the 5 days of live Zoom meetings, is available to you for only $47. But you can't wait. This is the last day, and it's only open to podcast listeners like you on Monday, August the 12th. Again, to join us tonight in the bootcamp that starts at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, just go to alanbeckley.com/bootcamp. Many podcast listeners just like you have joined us in the bootcamp and are making progress and gaining traction. I look forward to seeing you in the bootcamp tonight. Welcome to episode number 432. Today is a rebroadcast of one of our classic favorites, episode number 386, back in March 4th of this year with successful inventor Tom Klaff. He invented the Instaglow toaster, a high-tech toaster that cooks your toast perfectly every time without scorching or burning it in half the time. I think you're going to enjoy this episode as much as I did. Tom Klaff is a successful entrepreneur and disruptor. His mission as an entrepreneur has always been to focus on markets with little or no innovation, then to leverage innovative, disruptive technologies to solve long-standing problems, delighting buyers with intuitive and superior new products. He has a BA in English Literature from Brown University and an MS in Industrial Administration from Carnegie Mellon University, now Tepper School of Business. He has founded companies in multiple industries, including enterprise software, education, media, cybersecurity, and automotive, by solving consumer pain points with unique technologies. Prior to Revolution Cooking, Mr. Klaff launched Everbeat, a mobile health platform to help patients, caregivers, and doctors manage chronic illness with dignity. He also co-founded and launched Concourse Express, a software company that developed workflow-integrated, mobile, and easy-to-use loaner vehicle management solutions for dealerships to deliver superior customer experiences and improve dealer profitability. Tom was introduced to the toast problem by his business partner, Bruce, who harbored a lifelong frustration with slow toasters and ovens. Realizing slow cooking and long preheat times can be fixed. They set out to create a better electric heat transfer system. Tom assembled a team of world class engineers, designers, and product marketers in Boston, Massachusetts, where Revolution Cooking is headquartered today. Together, they are on a mission to bring joy and ingenuity to cooking, starting with a toaster. You'll want to listen to this entire interview where you'll learn what a cowl rod is, virtually unchanged since its invention in the 1890s, that is used in all conventional toasters, and why the cowl rod overcooks toast and takes so long to heat up. You'll also learn how and why he and his team elected to bypass licensing to instead build their own world-class toaster oven to the delight of consumers. And finally, why Tom chose to build a premium product with a matching price tag to serve the 44% of Americans who are aspirational buyers. Now let's get right to our interview with Tom Klaff. Tom Klaff, it's a pleasure to have you on the podcast with us today.
Nice to meet you, Alan. Thank you.
Tom, I'd like to ask you, can you share a bit of your background with our listeners? Like, where did you grow up and go to school? And what did you do before you became an inventor? Can you share that with us?
Oh, absolutely, Alan. I never really considered myself an inventor, still don't. When I grew up, I read all about all the great inventors like Edison, even Da Vinci, and even Henry Ford and Steve Jobs. And that was rarefied air. I never really thought of myself as an inventor because I really never was that mechanically inclined, but I was very creative and I always wanted to shake things up and be what I call a disruptor. But when I was growing up, I really wanted to be an athlete. And as a lot of young boys do, they have role models who are in sports and or on the screen, and they aspire to do something like that. I never really had any sense I was going to be an entrepreneur. I grew up in Baltimore with four brothers, and we were very competitive as young boys. And so sports was my thing. But then I used to get hurt a lot and wanted then to become a doctor as I met with a lot of orthopedic surgeons in my day. And so I was going down the medical school track thinking that I would, be a doctor, but realized that it wasn't being a doctor as much as it was having that independence and being able to be creative. I was really more drawn to that. My first job out of college was in sales for a startup, and I fell in love with just the whole energy that you would get from a startup. And I really wanted to be an entrepreneur right after that.
That makes perfect sense. In my own background, I've had some of that as well, having a long running career in telecom and also engineering with the Boeing company in the beginning. But I always wanted to do my own thing and ultimately have, and a little more independence and creativity, and corporate bureaucracy always seemed to be crowding me in a little bit. So I was never a great fit at big companies. I was always, just as you described, a better fit of more of a startup or smaller company environment, I would say. Anyways, and then you grew up in Baltimore and you had four brothers. So I can imagine the competition as you were describing.
Yeah, it was brutal.
Tom, you've taken on a product that really hasn't changed in over 100 years, and that's the toaster. Your proprietary Instaglow heating system that has a high-speed touchscreen toasters make them cook faster and better than conventional toasters. Can you briefly describe the aha moment that caused you to develop this technology? And also, what was the key problem you were seeking to solve, would you say?
Interestingly, Alan, our company really, while we're selling this Revolution toaster, we're not a toaster company. When I started this company 8 years ago, I've been a serial entrepreneur, and my modus operandi, if as you call it, I always look at large markets with little to no innovation. And I look at a problem or a quantifiably painful problem that I can solve and deliver value using disruptive technology. And I've created niche businesses around that. And I've found some decent success, not all the time, with that model. So I really don't come at it from I haven't been in the toaster industry or the small kitchen appliance industry. In fact, I've started 6 companies looking at it this way, with bringing innovation to a large market in different industries. mostly in software, mostly in business to business. I really haven't been in the consumer space either. I love learning. I love stretching myself. And I was introduced to my business partner 8 years ago. I just, sold my last business and was looking for something interesting to do. And really, for me, it's always been doing things with people I really enjoy doing work with, whether it's employees or peers or contractors or whoever, to build something. And this gentleman was telling me how he had a 40-year obsession with why it takes so long to toast bread. And he would, ask everybody, why does it take so long to toast bread when we could put a man on the moon and we can't make bread toast any faster? And that was really his obsession. But I really liked him and I was intrigued by it. I didn't know anything about cooking or toasting or anything like that. So I agreed that I would go to Chicago and there was a national convention and I would just walk around and just learn and talk to as many people as I can and just see what the industry is all about because I had never been in that industry before. And when I walked around the show floor, I'd noticed that when I looked inside of every toaster and every oven, every countertop toaster oven, every combination grill microwave oven, I saw the same thing. And it was this kind of squiggly grill coil called a cow rod. And I'm like, well, what is that cow rod? And I went back to my hotel and I just did some research on it and realized that cow rod is still state of the art, was invented in 1892. And it's in every single toaster and heating appliance, cooking appliance in every kitchen in the world. And when I looked around at the show floor, I saw, geez, there are $10,000 ovens, there are $10 toasters, and they're all using the same infrared cow rod. I got really excited when I saw that. And I called my partner, Bruce, and I said, I'm in. I said, but here's what we're going to do. I'll build you a fast toaster, but my interest is more than that. I want to look at disrupting this whole heating element industry. And I looked at it, high definition television replacing standard TV. That's the kind of business I wanted to build because I love platform technology businesses. Bruce and I agreed that we would start with the toaster. We didn't do any research other than that he wanted a fast one, but it was actually the right segment to work in because it was a throwaway category, very moribund. Nothing has been really invented on toasters. In fact, 97% of all toasters are under $100. Not very versatile appliance, but it was a perfect test bed for building a new heating system, which is really what I wanted to do. And Bruce agreed that we would do that.
There's so many fascinating things you described there, and I'm not going to try to touch on all of them, but for our listeners, I'd like to highlight just a couple of key points you made that I particularly liked. And early on, you mentioned that as you've owned and operated 6 different businesses of different types, your approach is to look at a large market with little or no innovation and then see if you can find an angle, you find something where improvement is needed to be made. And this is a perfect example when you describe, while the toaster industry, because I did just a bit of research before our call as well and saw that same 1897 or whatever that time frame was, 1892, really hadn't changed in 100 years. And anyways, is ripe for disruption, as you said. And it's old school that hadn't really changed over all these years. And you said no matter what the price tags from $10 to $100, they all still had that grill coil and the cow rod technology, if you want to call it that. But the bottom line problem was, as he put it, his 40-year obsession was, why does it take so long to toast bread? It ought to be much faster. And that's what brought the two of you together that got this started. And I think it's just a great story. And just as a quick side note, someone else who also disrupted an industry in a very different circumstance, who is actually just on the podcast this week, Charlie Cannon. He's all of 23 years old. He and partners started Vibride, which was installing brakes on a skateboard, right? And he looked at this and he said, this is insane. You've got skateboards, people running down long hills, burning up their shoes to brake, to slow the thing down. Skateboards have never had brakes. They've been the same way forever. So they were taking somewhat of the same approach to disrupting something that hadn't changed in forever.
Absolutely. And it's been just an interesting journey, Alan, because when Bruce and I agreed we would do this, He had already been investing in some technology that could solve this problem. And I agreed to research, think about how we could license it or do something with it. And I realized that licensing was going to be difficult, and especially in that industry where a lot of the established brands that you have in your kitchen today are really marketing brands, and they wouldn't know what to do with the technology because everybody buys their products from factories in China and puts their name on it. And how much of that is really, innovative, or is it really more of it's really a commodity based industry. And I looked at it like, why should consumers accept the status quo? Let's do something a little bit different. And I looked at analog companies that have done this with other categories, like Dyson has done it with vacuum cleaners and hand dryers and hair dryers. Vitamix with blenders. They make a great blender, and Keurig did it in the coffee industry. So I looked at what was similar about those three companies. Each of them has unique technology that delivered a great experience. Each created wonderfully designed products that were aspirational. And also they lifted the category in price. They refused to be a commodity product. And they looked at delivering a much better experience for their consumers who would pay for that better experience, even in categories that were tired, like coffee makers or blenders. So we said, well, why not us? And let's look at it from the standpoint of, we call it heat transfer, efficient heat transfer. If we can become an efficient heat transfer company or platform company, like Dyson was a motor company, like Keurig was a single serve coffee company, like Vitamix was a motorized high-powered blender company, why couldn't we become an efficient heat transfer platform that delivered these aspirational products on top? And Dyson actually, when he started, tried to license his motor to these brands and realized the same thing. And I wish I had read his book before I started this, because he realized that his fastest route to market was actually building the vessel or the appliance on top of his core technology to get his technology into the market. It was probably the cheapest, fastest thing to do by proving a concept and getting distribution to agree that this was a better solution.
It's such a great story. And I'd like to dive into the details a little bit about your product, basically. Can you describe briefly what your Instaglow toaster unit looks like? For example, how big is it? Does it look similar to a conventional toaster, or is it very different in appearance? Also, you've already spoken to this just a bit, but what is the secret sauce that allows it to cook items more quickly and thoroughly? And in the end, can you just give us sort of a visual description for our listeners of your product?
Absolutely. We realized that only the average kitchen consumer countertop can support 5 appliances. If you're not one of the 5 appliances, you're going to be in the cupboard and you won't be used. And we desperately, believed that the design we had to have in this toaster had to be something that was counterworthy, that would replace something else. So we designed a toaster with actually the same footprint. It's the same size as any regular toaster you would see on your kitchen counter today. But we realized that we needed to make it remarkable. And especially since the heating system we invented, and I'll get to that in a second, was inside the chassis. So you weren't going to see it if our toaster was sitting on the shelf next to our competitors. There's no way a consumer would know who we are from a brand standpoint if we look like everybody else. And especially getting somebody to buy the unit, get it onto their counter and experience the best performing toaster on the market. So I took out my iPhone one day and I said to Phil, my partner who's in the engineering, who helped design this, I said, why don't we just, look at this as no levers, no knobs. Everybody's used to having their iPhones around, and let's make this a touch screen, something cool. And let's angle it so that people can actually see it when it's on the counter. And let's design the toaster so it really doesn't look like a toaster, but it is a toaster. And it's so sleek that somebody who sees it in a store or sees it on Amazon would say, I got to have it. And that's really, how we designed it. It's something that, like a piece of art that you would put, in your home that would replace another painting. You wanted it there. You want it to be aspirational. And that's how we designed it. The core Instaglow heating technology, I took a trip out to Sweden to meet with a metallurgist, to figure out what kind of metallic alloy could support high heat and high efficient heat transfer. So we actually designed it with a different alloy that is typically used in a heating element. And with Phil, my engineer partner, we designed an element that was thin, whereas cow rods are thick, which requires a lot of electricity and a lot of power to heat up, which is why your oven takes 20 minutes to preheat, because you got to heat up all that metal. And that's also the reason why your toast takes 4 minutes, because you have to heat up all that metal in the card. So we realized that we needed a metallic alloy that could get hotter, and the metal needed to be thinner, and the geometry needed to be not cylindrical like a grill coil is, which casts heat 360 degrees. We wanted a geometry that would cast heat directly to the bread or directly to the food. So all of that came into play. We designed that heating element, and we designed it so that it could expand. As metal gets hot, it expands. So you needed to keep it taut so it didn't buckle. And that's the reason why, sometimes your bread doesn't toast evenly. You want to make sure that you have even toasted bread. And all that we filed under a utility patent, in addition to all the machine control logic that we needed for the toaster to understand what was in the bread cage and the algorithms about how long that bread should be toasted. When you see the end product, you'll see a touchscreen toaster that allows you to select what kind of bread you want to toast. It could be a waffle. It could be, whole wheat bread or sourdough bread or raisin bread. And you can select what level of toastiness, how brown you want it. And then on the screen, it'll show you exactly what it'll look like when it comes out of the toaster. And then when you hit start, the bread automatically lowers. And then about a minute and a half later, as opposed to 3 to 4 minutes, the bread will pop up with a nice little chime, happy chime, and you'll have great tasting bread. And the bread is, when it toasts this fast, it's like a steak being seared, locks in all the moisture and flavor, that the bread even tastes different. We've heard many of our customers say, I've never tasted a bagel taste like this, or you put the Wonder back into Wonder Bread. And the reason for that in regular toasters, when you toast so long, it just bakes out all the moisture and flavor and becomes crackery and dry, and you just don't have that taste. So that's really our story about how our toaster got started.
So many interesting points. Again, I'm just going to highlight just a few of them, but I especially like that from the very beginning, you said our research on kitchen appliances says typical counter is going to support 5 appliances. Everything else is going to go under the counter. We want ours to be one of those 5. So we want to design it in such a way that they'll be proud of it, like it, and enjoy it, and constrain it to fit well. So basically fits within the same footprint as a typical toaster, because you don't want it taking up more shelf space, because that could be a decision point of hiding it underneath. And then I like your analogy to the iPhone in terms of very disruptive and approaching things in a totally different way and not looking like others. And you said, look, let's do this with no levers, no knobs. Let's use a touch screen where people can interact with it in that way. So now it looks completely different. And right away, it gives them, I want that. And I like the fact that you had it tilted in such a way that it's easy to see. And then as you were describing your heat transfer technology and recognizing the challenges with the existing ones. Thank you very much for sharing that with us. I think that gives us a much more clear picture. I wanted to ask you kind of a contrarian question here a little bit. Looking at your website, your Instaglow toaster appears to be a premium product with retail prices ranging from $349.95 to $399.95. And you have accessories that start at $29.95. What would you say to critics who might say it's too expensive? And also, how would you describe the demographics of your typical buyer? Can you share that with us?
Absolutely. So I mentioned the companies that I admired when I started the podcast with you, Alan, and Vitamix and Keurig are 2 that I admire, because they took coffee machines were like $27, and Keurig launched a $150 coffee machine with pods. So you're looking at even more money for coffee, but the experience is so great. And now I think they command almost 40 to 50 million homes in the US. So I needed advisors. And part of my MO, when I talked about my modus operandi, when I go into a market, is I try to find subject matter experts who can help me understand the market quickly. and helped me build a playbook around how to go to market. I'm always thinking about how we take this innovation to market quickest, fastest, cheapest. I went out and I got the president and the founder of Keurig's consumer business on my advisory board, and the CEO of Vitamix, who had recently retired, on my advisory board. And I brought them both on. And what I found is that when you have, people like that who have essentially paid the dumb tax of doing the things that I want to do, how you go to market, with whom, how do you get into the retailers, how do you get the pitch going, do you go direct to consumer? All of these things were really important. And pricing being another thing. Should I be shy of pricing? How much research, do you rely on to do? And you have to do research, but there's also a little bit of a gut instinct that you need to have too. I think the smartest thing I did was to get some wisdom, people who've done this before, who knew people who knew how to get into the market, who helped us. And you don't have to pay them. They'll do it because they want to be a part of something innovative. And I found that with abject humility and just clear desire, people just want to be around people like that and to help them out. So that was huge, getting advice. I then read a book, which is the Bible at our company, and I have everybody read it. It's called 113 Million Markets of One. I'm bringing it out right now. And what it says is that 47% of Americans, we sell only in the US right now because it's a 120 volt country. We're not in the 220 volt system yet. So I figured let's contain it's actually easy. We understand our market. We're in the US. It's a big market, the biggest market in the world. But 47% of Americans are aspirational buyers. And there's really no household income, ethnic or geographic, breakdown or distribution around those kinds of buyers. And they account for about 77% of the GDP, meaning that 53% of the rest of the country are deal seekers, commodity shoppers. These are the people who go to Walmart, and they're perfectly fine. There's a huge market for that. But for us, we decided, because this is a disruptive technology, and because we're using a touchscreen system, which is not cheap, and it delivers this aspirational experience, we really can't go down the commodity route, nor should we. So we decided that, taking a page out of this book, let's create this as an aspirational product and position it for consumers who want to be first, who like status to a certain extent, but also appreciate the entrepreneurial spirit of the company, trying to create and disrupt the commodity nature of this industry. There are people who want to be first. There are people who are tech enthusiasts. We have grandparents and retirees who want to purchase one for their second homes and also show off to their grandkids. So there's a huge market for aspirational products. And we decided that we were going to go that route, just like Dyson did, just like Vitamix did, and just like Keurig did.
Thanks again for sharing all of that. And I like, again, several points I would like to highlight for our listeners, and especially from that book. 47% of Americans are aspirational buyers across every race, color, and creed, income level even. And that drives 77% of GDP. That's an amazing statistic, and also a great market segment to be targeting. And I like also that, I'm not sure anybody else has at least commented over the 200 plus people I've had on the podcast, that they intentionally went to find subject matter experts to advise them. And you went to Keurig, president and founder, and then also Vitamix, because that's the model you were going after in terms of bringing a product to market. And as you mentioned, when you've got, I guess I would call it a mission that is fascinating and interesting and aspirational, it's easy to draw people in to get on your team because they want to be a part of something like that. So I think that's a really great approach. And this is, interestingly enough, in the last month, this is the third different guest I've had on that essentially were with aspirational product, a little bit of a higher level premium product, but targeted exactly to that aspirational marketplace. And in all three cases have done so very successfully.
Yes, and it certainly helps when countries go through recessions. I think that even really, when my prior business, I was in the auto dealership market. We sold into all these dealerships, but a lot of the high-end dealerships like Mercedes-Benz and BMWs, I noticed that a lot of the consumers who, were buying these cars or leasing these cars were house poor. There will be economically, from a household income standpoint, probably shouldn't be buying one of these cars, but again, they're aspirational and there are a lot of them.
Funny side note, when I first moved to Dallas in my mid-20s, and I was an engineer, not making tons of money or anything, but an engineer, and I walked around one of the local apartments that wasn't far from mine that was quite the cool place to be. And as I was looking into the parking lot, I saw a fair number of Corvettes. And I was thinking, wow, they are just describing exactly what you said. They're putting a lot of money into a car and not so much money into an apartment. And it seems an interesting value system, but I think that speaks to the same thing you just mentioned. As we roll towards a close, I'd like to ask, are there any parting words you'd like to leave us with?
Yeah, I think that what I've learned, the products we make, and this is, I love Apple as a company. They make just exquisite products, great design. And I find that when I ever buy an Apple product, whether it's was an iPod or an iPad or even the iPhone, you really didn't need to read a manual. And when I look at our industry and when I see these ovens and air fryers and everything that's coming through the chute, and there are these 65-page manuals that come along with it. I think that the message that I tell my team, and then we absolutely work towards, is how can we build products that are so intuitive and easy and simple that don't require a manual, and realizing that it is so hard to make something so simple. My hat goes off to inventors who can make products that are so simple, but the engineering that goes behind it is so complex that the consumer doesn't even notice it or realize it. That is the hardest thing to do. And it's probably the most valuable thing to do. Taking the time to really figure out how to make something so simple to use and operate, but has a lot of complexity behind it. I would say that's the thing that would be my parting words. And I always go down when my favorite quote is like a Mark Twain quote is, if I want to give you a 2-hour presentation, I'm ready right now. But if you only want a 5-minute speech, it's going to take me a couple weeks to prepare. I think that's inventorship right there.
Yeah, an excellent point. And I was also thinking of, once again, another illustration. What you just described is a guest I had on 2 weeks ago with Ember.com. They make very high-tech coffee mugs that automatically heat your coffee or tea to a preset temperature that you choose. And it's got just as you were describing, it's all the electronics are within the body of the bottom of the cup, and it heats up to 144 degrees in the case of mine. And it's just amazing because it was also going after a simple point. I get a cup of coffee or tea in 5 minutes, it's cooled off. How can I get something that'll stay at a consistent temperature? And that's another example of a very creative way and a different way to look at a marketplace and create a really cool product out of it. So my last question for you is, how can our listeners reach you if they have other questions?
Email is probably the best. If you go to my email address is tklaff at revcook, that's REVCOOK.com. tklaff at revcook.com.
And I'll just repeat that back. It's tklaff at revcook.com. That's TKLAFF at REVCOOK.com. Did I get that right?
That's right. That's correct.
And I would presume then that the website would be revcook.com then also?
Yes, it is. Yes.
Okay, that's super. Tom, I want to thank you so much for being on the podcast with us today and sharing your journey and the mindset and the things that you learned in devising this extremely cool product, toaster, as well as really a family of other products. And I'd like to reserve the opportunity, perhaps another 6 months or a year from now, to get back in touch with you and see what you've got going on at that time.
I would love that, Alan, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you.
You bet. Thanks a lot, and we'll be talking to you soon.
Thank you.
Do you ever feel stuck? Do you just wish there was someone you could talk to who actually understands the ups and downs and challenges of inventing. Who doesn't think you're crazy? Do you ever rack your brain with challenging questions, wishing there was someone you could trust who could provide answers? If this describes you, I've got good news. You're invited to attend my free live event for inventors called Ask Alan Anything. Yep, you'll get to ask me anything, and I'll do my best to answer your questions. This is a totally free Q&A forum I'll be hosting live via Zoom meeting. The Ask Alan Anything event is coming up very soon on Wednesday, August 21st. There are no catches, there are no hooks, and there is no cost to attend. But you must register to attend this free event. Just go to alanbeckley.com/AAA. Put in your name and email address, and you'll be registered to join us on Wednesday, August 21st. Oh, there's an added bonus. You'll get for free, just for attending, an added incentive. It's called the 6+4 Fast Track Resource for Inventors. It's a $17 value that you'll get for free. Don't wait. Register now while it's on your mind. August 21st will be here before you know it. I don't want you to miss out by waiting too late. All the information is at that link. Just go to alanbeckley.com/AAA to register now, and I'll see you on Wednesday, August 21st. Oh, if you have a friend who would like to attend, just direct them to the same link. Again, alanbeckley.com/AAA. I look forward to seeing you on Wednesday, August 21st. Thanks so much for tuning in to Inventors Helping Inventors. If you like the show, please tell your friends about it. Make sure to subscribe in iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts so you won't miss a single episode. Talk to you soon.